Did you know that America's first true act of defiance against injustice wasn't led by the people we usually celebrate in textbooks? Long before the names we honor on holidays, there were forgotten figures, ordinary men and women, who risked everything when the odds were stacked against them. Their decisions didn't just shape battles, they shaped the very idea of freedom. But here's the twist: not all heroes wore uniforms or gave speeches, some changed history in silence. So, who deserves to be remembered as the real hero of America's story? One name that rises above the shadows of history is Frederick Douglass. Born into slavery in 1818, Douglass grew up in an America deeply divided, where liberty was preached but rarely practiced. For a young boy trapped in bondage, the dream of freedom seemed almost impossible. And yet, through resilience, intelligence, and sheer willpower, he not only escaped slavery but went on to become one of the most powerful voices of the 19th century. Douglass was more than an abolitionist, he was a living contradiction to the racist ideology that enslaved him. A man who had been denied education became one of the era's greatest orators and writers. His story is not just about his personal escape, but about his determination to fight for the millions still trapped in bondage. Why does this matter today? Because his journey forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth about America's past, and its ongoing struggles with freedom and equality. Douglass's life reminds us that history is not just a story of victories and defeats, but of courage, conflict, and compromise. And as we dive deeper, we'll uncover the moments that defined his journey, the triumphs that lifted him into the spotlight, and the flaws that revealed his humanity. Stay with me, because what comes next is where Douglass's story truly takes shape. Frederick Douglass's rise from enslavement to national prominence is nothing short of extraordinary. His escape from slavery in 1838 was not just a personal act of rebellion, it was the first step toward becoming a symbol of defiance for millions. Imagine the risk: a young man disguised as a sailor, boarding a train to freedom, every moment carrying the threat of capture. Yet he made it, and in doing so, rewrote the possibilities of his own life. Once free, Douglass wasted no time. His speeches electrified audiences across the North. Crowds marveled at his eloquence, so much so that many doubted he had ever been enslaved. But that skepticism only fueled him. He wrote his autobiography, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, to prove his story was real, and it became one of the most powerful abolitionist texts of its time. His strengths were undeniable: charisma, intellect, and an unshakable belief in justice. Yet, Douglass also faced challenges. He wrestled with the dangers of being a visible black leader in a violently racist society. Every speech, every book, carried the risk of exposure to slave catchers or violent mobs. Still, he pressed forward. And here's where the tension builds. Douglass was not just a fighter against slavery, he was also a critic of the very systems America held sacred. He questioned the meaning of the 4th of July when freedom was denied to millions. He challenged presidents, pressed for the right of black men to fight in the Civil War, and later demanded that women's voices be heard too. But this rise wasn't without conflict. His ambitions sometimes alienated allies, and his choices weren't always universally praised. Was he too radical, or not radical enough? These questions shadowed him, and they set the stage for the defining moments of his career. Moments that would push him beyond the role of abolitionist and into the fabric of American identity itself. The turning point came during the Civil War. As the nation tore itself apart, Douglass seized the moment to push for the inclusion of black soldiers in the Union Army. It was a gamble, an untested idea in a society still deeply racist. Yet Douglass believed that if African Americans could fight and die for the Union, they could no longer be denied their claim to citizenship. His meetings with President Abraham Lincoln were electric, full of urgency and conviction. Imagine the scene: a man born into slavery, now sitting across from the President of the United States, arguing not only for freedom but for the chance to prove that freedom had meaning. When Lincoln finally authorized the recruitment of black soldiers, Douglass's vision became reality. The result was staggering. Nearly 200,000 African American men would serve in the Union Army and Navy, tipping the scales of war and changing the future of the nation. This was Douglass's greatest triumph, proof that his relentless voice could bend the arc of history. But even in this high point, shadows remained. America's racism did not vanish overnight, and Douglass knew the fight was far from over. Still, in that moment, he had accomplished the impossible. He had turned his life struggle into a victory for millions. And yet, this leaves us with a question. Was Douglas's greatest achievement behind him, or would the true test of his legacy come after the cannons fell silent? When we step back and look at Frederick Douglass's life as a whole, the verdict becomes clear. His legacy is not just about escaping slavery, but about transforming pain into purpose, and turning silence into a weapon of truth. Douglass embodied both the strengths and contradictions of a nation in crisis. His brilliance as a speaker and writer gave a human voice to the fight for abolition, inspiring thousands. His relentless pursuit of justice kept the question of slavery alive in America's conscience, even when others tried to bury it. But Douglass was not without flaws. At times, his ambition put him at odds with fellow activists. Some accused him of being too harsh, others of not being radical enough. He struggled with balancing his personal image with the larger movement, and his later years revealed tensions between his fame and the grassroots fight. These imperfections, however, make him more human, and perhaps more relatable. What matters most is that his courage left a blueprint for resistance. In today's America, where debates about freedom, equality, and justice still rage on, Douglass's words ring with startling relevance. When he said, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress," he wasn't only speaking to his time, he was speaking to every generation that would come after. The impact of his story reminds us that change rarely arrives without sacrifice, that speaking truth to power is never easy, and that history is shaped by those bold enough to stand when it's most dangerous to do so. Douglass did not live to see all the promises of America fulfilled, but his fight lit a path forward. And now, the question shifts to us. What do we do with that legacy? Who do we listen to, who do we challenge, and who do we become in the face of injustice? So, if Douglass's story has moved you today, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories of the heroes who shaped America. Which U.S. hero inspires you most?